Does the government work for us or do we work for the government? What the heck is going on in the Republican Party these days? Tonight, what do the Republicans stand for? In the seemingly endless and continually changing battle for the Republican presidential nomination, a few facts are becoming clearer each day. It is clear to your night watchman, and probably to you, that the presidential nomination process is really a battle for the heart and soul of the Republican Party, and it is a never-ending one. Republicans once embraced the values of small central government, low taxes, the states as the principal engines of government, and a defensive use of the military only. Barry Goldwater, Ronald Reagan, and both Presidents Bush all ran for election under those banners. Only President George W. Bush eventually rejected them. Here's a pop quiz. Under which president from Texas did the federal government invade a foreign country that never threatened us, expand the federal government's debt by adding trillions in entitlements, take over areas of governments that for hundreds of years had never been the province of the feds, and borrow so aggressively that generations of Americans as yet unborn will be saddled with the debt? Quick, was it George W. Bush or Lyndon Baines Johnson? Answer, it was both of them. But at least LBJ acknowledged that he was trying to become a latter-day FDR. George W. Bush somehow managed to persuade the Republicans in Congress that he was a conservative and that these expansions of government and vindictive wars were somehow consistent with conservative principles and were really what the voters wanted and the Constitution permitted. He left office with such a high disapproval rating among Republicans that he chose not to join the same people who 4 years earlier had nominated him to run for a second term. And so he stayed away from his own party's nominating convention. That was unprecedented for a sitting president in modern times. No president in modern times worked harder to do the opposite of what he said as a candidate he'd do than George W. Bush. And for this, the Republicans suffered terribly at the polls. Barack Obama won in 2008 in a landslide, in large part because the Republicans under George W. Bush stood for nothing even resembling the values of Barry Goldwater and Ronald Reagan. You could even argue that among the reasons we are saddled today with the socialized medicine called Obamacare is the huge Democratic majorities in the Congress produced in 2008 by an electorate sick and tired of George W. Bush. Then things changed a little. In 2010, after Obamacare became the law of the land, Republicans gained traction by returning during the campaign to their roots. The Tea Party profoundly influenced Republicans running for Congress to endorse the small government, sound money, bring the troops home values that Republicans have stood for. And they were rewarded with control of the House of Representatives and close to a tie in the Senate. Then those Republicans in the House failed to stop President Obama from starting his own war in Libya. They declined to audit the Federal Reserve. They authorized the president to borrow another $2.4 trillion. And basically, just like they did when George W. Bush was president, they governed by abandoning their values. They governed as if they were Democrats. Now the Republicans are faced again with the need to make a choice. Who will run against President Obama, and what will that person stand for? Well, this should be a no-brainer. Recent history tells us when Republicans stand for small government, they get elected. When they stand for big government, they lose. And when they win and govern like they're Democrats, they get kicked out of office. So, should the Republicans nominate a big government guy who believes that the government should manage health care, or a big government guy who wears his religion on his sleeve and wants to tell you how to live your personal life, or a big government guy who wants to colonize the moon? Or should the party return to its Goldwater-Reagan roots and keep the government within the confines of the Constitution and off the people's backs? The answer is obvious. From New York, defending freedom every night of the week. So long, America.